So the message of non-duality would be that anything that appears as two, or in the phenomena of two-ness, would not be our absolute nature. So in your experience right now, as you sit here, you are looking at a screen or something, maybe a phone or something, yeah? So there's a sense of being you. There's a sense of you which would be represented as the body and the screen, yes? So there would be a subject and object. Michael, if some of this doesn't make sense, or if somebody, please just write, yeah? There's a subject object here. So that would put you in the position of two-ness. Yeah, and this message is not two. So this message moves towards a negation rather than an affirmation. You're not trying to become something with the message of non-duality. Yeah. A lot of people come to the message of not two because they've seen the fallacy or in a way, the failing system of trying to get out of or into something. Yeah. So there's this subject-object sort of relationship. Now, if you go into your head, yeah, and you listen to the head for a minute, there's thoughts coming up. And then if I was to ask you who notices those thoughts, you would say, I do. So there would be thoughts, and there would be the noticer of thoughts. Now that again puts you into a position of two. This message being non-duality, you would negate both as what you are, as your nature, let's say. Yes? Right. So the subject that we're taking ourselves to be, let's say J or me, and when the head says me, it's really talking about the body. Yeah, it's pointing towards the body. Is taken to be the ultimate subject of all these objects, including your own thoughts, feelings, emotions, perceptions, and interpretations. Yes? So there's a sense that you are the subject and everything else being an object. That would put you into a seat of two-ness, subject-object. Now it's easier to negate the objects in a way because you're not identified as the objects. You're not identified as the book or the jar, yeah? So in a way you could say, oh, I'm not the jar, obviously, I know that, yeah? Then thoughts come up, and those thoughts really seem to be yours, mainly from the system that you're the one that they seem to arise to, yeah? But that puts you into a duality there. There's thoughts, and then there's a you who they seem to arise to. So you have to negate the thoughts and also the sense of the you that the thoughts arise to. Because both of those arise to something. Something is knowing this duality. Something is knowing this subject-object relationship. Now the head has you as the ultimate subject to all the objects. And this would be the this would be the identification or the misidentification. That's what I was looking for. This would be the misidentification, which would cause suffering. Is the head is not the ultimate subject. It's taking itself to be the ultimate subject, and it's claiming that everything is arising to a you. Yes, so self-inquiry is an investigation into that you and into the dualistic system. So anything that appears as two in this is negated. So if you sit down and meditate, and you're identified as the thoughts and the one the thoughts arise to, then there's an attempt to stop the mind. Yeah, let's say, or pause the mind. The thing is, you're still identified as the one who's pausing the mind. So you're still in this relationship of two-ness. And when the head comes back online, you're going to be bound again. You're going to be bound to self yet again. Yes? Good. So, this message is simply saying you're not that, what is appearing as two-ness. Yeah, primarily the sense of being the ultimate subject that all these perceived objects arise to. Because the thing is, the idea of you is known or perceived by something, yes? Hi, Samya. It's perceived or known by something. And then the head comes up and claims that thing. and says, there I am. Yes? But it comes up after what you already are. So, Michael, if you have any questions, please just write them in the thing, because we're just kind of starting from the start here, yeah? But this is the basis of this message. Not to. So it's not an affirmation. That doesn't so much work in this way. Because any developing or bettering, let's say, or trying to become, would be of what you're not. It would be like making the mental system try to become the absolute. But it's like Ramana Maharshi says, being ourselves reality. Being ourselves reality. So when he says that, he would take it that you are reality right now. Because he's saying being. He's not saying like I'm going to become reality or I have to do a bunch of work or something to get to reality. He's saying being ourselves reality. So you are reality right now as you are, yeah? So then everything that's trying to get free or liberated, let's say, everything that's trying not to suffer, if you were reality, there would be no need for liberation, yes? Because you are reality right now. So any movement that goes and tries to become reality would be unreality, we could say, trying to become reality. And that is the system of two-ness, the mental system of 1-2, trying to become not two. And it cannot do that. So the affirmative route of trying to better the head or better the body to become a not body will not work. Yeah? Non-duality is not effective for self-improvement in the way that many people would approach it in the West. It's the same way that the 12 steps are not a self-improvement program. They're a loss of faith in self or in this perceived subjectivity. It's pulling faith away from that because you already are reality, being ourselves reality, yes? Being ourselves reality would be losing faith in what's trying to become reality. Because that can't become reality. That would be like, the head in the mental system in the world, yeah, is like unreality arising within the spaciousness of reality. Ultimately not separate, but when we're sitting here talking about it, you can only hear it as separate. Because words can only be dualistic. So it's not it in a way, but it's just pointing, yes? So really the basis of it is to see that when things pop up in duality, in that dualistic 1-2 relationship, it's negated as what you're not. As not the absolute or the true nature, yes? And when that gets negated and you step back and back, you can only land in reality because you are reality, being ourselves reality. So that's what this message, at least from my humble opinion, is pointing at. It's not two. It's actually quite basic in many ways. It's very basic. There's an identification with the body. The body is taking itself to be the ultimate subject of all the objects. And then most spiritual practice is trying to better the body to a point where it's not a body. And that doesn't work because the body can't become not a body. Yeah? Because the body is a body in a dualistic phenomena world. Right? So it can't become not a body, but the head will have us chasing freedom forever. The mental system wants to get out of its own discomfort, but it can't do it. So in AA we say self can't get out of self. And this is why it becomes a negation of two-ness. This is why it becomes a negation of two-ness. Because any affirmation and trying to make something better would a dualistic system trying to become non-dual, and it can't do it. It's a dualistic system. There's nothing wrong with the mind and the body, really. But when we're hardcore identified with it, it's a very uncomfortable situation to be in for many of us. And would be why we go to drugs and alcohol and these types of different things. So if anybody has a question, please ask away. And we were just kind of going from the start in many ways. And then there's great little phrases, All you really need is like a little phrase, like being ourselves reality. That's a very nice thing, you see. Being ourselves reality means that you are reality right now. So if you are reality right now and you don't feel like reality, let's say you are liberated, because reality wouldn't need to be liberated, it is reality. If you are liberated right now, or free, or the peace to me is the word, shanti, peace. So if Ramana is saying you are peace, not the body's not peace, the mind obviously is not peace, but you are peace. But you don't feel, your experience right now is not of constant peace. Yes? So this is why it's a negation, you see? Because that must not be you. If you trust in the words of Ramana, which I would, he would seem to probably know. Since he's, I think he knows what he's talking about. Yeah, so it would be a negation of what doesn't seem to be peace, and you would land in, well, there's only one place to land, which would be reality, which would be peace, yeah? Now the thing is, if you are peace and you don't feel like your nature is peace right now, then the head immediately goes, I'm going to become peace. And the head cannot become peace. The head can find maybe glimpses of peace of when it stops, but that's not the head finding peace. That's the head stopping, and in a way you seeing the space between the mental movements, yeah? But the thing is, that mental system cannot become peaceful. The mental system's in anxious movement because it's in duality. So it's left, right, up, down. This is how the head works. There's nothing wrong with it, but it would be very important to see it as it is. Rather than the idea that it's going to become, it's only going to see compassionately. That's not going to happen. Your head is going to judge. Yeah. So this is what we're saying with negation. Any affirmation is the head trying to get free or become something that it can't become. Yeah? So in my experience, this is how I spent a lot of my sobriety. Trying to make the head into like a perfect mental system. It doesn't get depressed. It doesn't get angry. It doesn't get irritated. It's no longer self-centered, yeah? The head is no longer going to be self-centered. But I wasn't seeing, now this was a misunderstanding, because I wasn't seeing that the head is a self-centered system. Individuality is a self-centered system. And it's not going to become a not self-centered system because its nature is self-centered. It's by seeing that you are not the mental system, or by hearing the message of not to. Yeah, because the mental system's in the throne of ultimate subjectivity, and the whole thing is not true. It's a fake God. Yeah, it's a false God, as Ramana would say. Or in recovery, they'd say something is playing God, and you have to quit playing God. Yeah, the mental system is playing God constantly. It's giving meaning to everything, and then if we're identified as it, we're living as the meaning giver. And it seems to be giving weird meaning back and forth, all kinds of different meaning to all kinds of different things, you see? And it's not going to stop doing that because this is its nature. This is its nature. This is what the head does. It's self-centered. It's interpret everything from a self-centered point of view, and it can't do anything else. And to be honest, to live in this world, we don't really want it to do anything else. You see? Yes. But I was under the misunderstanding that I was going to change the mental system, being identified with it, I was going to change it into not a self-centered system. And it kept failing. And the misunderstanding was why I didn't know why, you see? I did not know why. Because this message had not hit in a way to see that I'm not the self-centered system. Because I was waiting for it to stop being self-centered, and I was seemingly failing constantly. Constantly. And the failure is the juice. It's like the beauty in the whole thing. Because it's never not going to fail. So hopefully it fails enough that you start to give up on the mental system becoming not a mental system. Or you give up on the body becoming not a body, you see. And then what will you land in? Being ourselves reality. You negate it. You don't have to destroy it or anything, yes? Okay. I'm just going to look at some of the thoughts that are written here. Negation kind of harsh. Like, all the self-help is like, be nice to yourself. But we can't be nice to this thought loop. Brutal negation. Brutal negation is not the language I would use, Samya. Because brutal negation can lead to suppressing things. And this is not a denial or a suppression. In some of Nisargadatta Maharaj's books, he would use the word deny your thoughts. But he doesn't mean like suppress the thoughts. All he means is a negation, that they're not yours. The thoughts keep going in a way, yeah? I mean, you might get big pauses in thought, but thoughts are coming back eventually. Yeah? It's just the identification with them. If you take the brutal approach or you go to war with the head, you're going to end up suppressing the contents of your experience, which is going to compress your experience, and it's actually going to identify you more with the body, because then your head is going to want to get out of it even more, and the identification goes on, you see? In a way, negation and self-inquiry are very soft. It's just like a very soft seeing of what's coming up and negating that, because you know it's in two-ness. If you take the brutal approach, the outcome is going to be brutal. You're going to be bound to being the fighter of thought. And it becomes very uncomfortable. Even worse, you're going to be bound to the idea that you're the knower of non-duality. And that makes it super uncomfortable. Because for you to be the knower of non-duality would make everybody else the unknower of non-duality. And how could anything be more separate than that? That would be duality, like with fireworks and stuff on it. It's like that is the most dualistic, and you're bound to being the knower. Knowing stuff in a way is a heavy weight. Yeah. Yeah. So if you take the brutal route, it's not going to work, because you're going to suppress, and this has nothing to do with suppression. In a way, this opens the door to everything that's happening. Yeah. Is this like I am not my thoughts, I am the observation of my thoughts? Okay, Michael, nice. So I am not my thoughts, yeah? Let's look at this, because this is why questions are beautiful in a way. You're not asking the question, so it highlights the dualistic system perfectly. I am not my thoughts. So that puts you into two-ness right there, Michael. You see that? There's an I there, and then there's thoughts. Yeah? That's perfect. That's a perfect question to highlight where this message is pointing to. I am not my thoughts. So then you go to the second half of the question. I am the observation of my thoughts. Yeah? So you're still in the I and thoughts. You see that? At least that far of it? There's an I there, a sense of I, and then there's that the sense of being the I is being the seer of the thoughts. That makes sense? You said okay to the first one, so I assume you say okay to the second one because it's the same idea. Yeah. Okay, good. That is duality. Right there. Perfect. I am not my thoughts. Thoughts and I. Two. I am the observation of my thoughts. I am seeing the thoughts. Thoughts and I is two. You're not the thoughts, nor are you the seer of the thoughts. So you step back again. Yeah, you negate both of those. There's a seeing of the whole operation before the seer is instilled. The idea of seeing thoughts, if you really want to, this is really kind of trippy, but the idea of being the seer of thoughts actually comes after the thought. Because there is no self. There is no thing inside of the body which is called an individual, yeah? It's a coming and going, just like the rest of the thinking. It's like when you go to sleep at night and you go into deep sleep, you're seemingly not there, yeah? But when you wake up, something knows that you were dreaming. Yes? So there's something before this mental system, before the thoughts, and then before the I, which is claiming to be the seer of the thoughts. So being the seer of the thoughts would be the bondage of self. You are bonded to self. Because thought, you could say thoughts are self. The sense of individuality is manifested through the thoughts. Yeah, you're bonded to those thoughts somehow. But there is no self. So it's just a bondage. You can't be bound to nothing. So there's some kind of glue which is sticking you to the thoughts. It is being the seer of the thoughts, the doer of the thoughts, the thinker, which has you bound to the thoughts. Now, no matter what the thoughts say, it doesn't matter how off or crazy those thoughts are, you're bound to them. Yeah? So even if you see the thoughts and you go, those thoughts are crazy, they're still taken to be your thoughts. So you're still bound to the outcome of those crazy thoughts, let's say. Yeah? So you negate the thoughts, which is pretty simple, but people get stuck on the I, or being the seer of the thoughts, or let's say the thinker of the thoughts. Yeah? So in Advaita, in Indian non-dual, yes, which will come from the Vedas, let's say, there is no doer, and that would equal that there is no self, but there is no doer of the thoughts. So when there's a thought coming up, Advaita would point to that there is no doer of that thought. That's a phenomena, essentially. Yes? So then the thought comes up, and then the head's second move is to point to a you. So it claims that thought, and it says, that's my thought. And that my would be represented by this body. So you are now bound through the I, or through the seeing of the thoughts. You're bound to the thoughts, and you're bound to the body. Yeah, because that I is the false God. That I is the false subjectivity. Yes, it's taking itself to be the absolute, and it will continue to do so. Yes? This is the thing. Your head is convinced that you are God. Your head is convinced that you, as a body, are awareness, and that is the false identification of self. Small s self, not big S self from Ramana. Yeah? So that's a great question you ask, because that is like duality in a nutshell. Yeah? So really we're not bound so much to the thoughts, but we get bound to that I. It's the my, really, that sticks us to the discomfort of life. Because life is happening. It's arising and it's falling. It's all moving through space in a way. Except when the my gets put on it, it gets very personal. And this is the self-centeredness of the head. The my is what really needs to be looked at most or negated most. Because that word my, me, or I is suggesting that there's an individual inside of this body. And in India, they would say there's no doer. In Buddhism, they would say there is no self. So that I which is a mental movement, yeah, or a sense, we could say, inside the body, like a sense of individuality, is actually a non-existent thing. But it's taken to be an existent thing. That would be taking unreality to be reality. And that would bond us to the contents of experience, this body and this mind, yeah? And you are now under the dictatorship of the mental system. Now, you're not doing the mental system. The mental system is like a program. So you're born, a bunch of stuff happens in life, your head interprets the world through that lens. That's a very not sufficient way to explain that, but it's kind of short, yeah? So your head interprets and perceives through the lens of its own programming. You're not doing that. It's like a habit pattern, yeah? It's like a computer is programmed to make cars or something, or build a car part. That's what that computer does, you see? Okay. So when that programming comes up, it presents you with interpretation and a perception of life. For many, many people, that's very uncomfortable because that interpretation is based on past and it's projecting into the future. So most of it's not actually even happening. Most of the mental contents is not actually even arising. It's not happening in time, yeah? It's not, it's just like an old process kind of interpreting that way. And you're bound to it. And that gets very uncomfortable because it's, from my experience, vastly inaccurate. So then when you try to get out of that movement, you try to get out of the discomfort of the head, but you do it as the head. And that doesn't work. That's self, small s self, trying to get out of small s self. And that's bondage, yeah? Because you're taking yourself to be the mental system. So the only way to get out of it, if you're identified with it, it would be as it. And essentially this message is saying you're not it. Yeah, so any movement the head makes to try to get out of itself, you're not doing that. But if you're identified as the I, which owns the mental system, you're bound to trying to get out of it as it, and you can't do that. But you're already not it. So let the mental system fail and fail and fail on trying to become not a mental system. Because the more it fails, the more you're going to be convinced that you're not it. Yes. This is the beauty of this message to me. It highlights a bunch of misunderstandings, yeah. Just right away, like baseline misunderstandings. So it's not so much the contents of experience. Let's say emotions, sensations, perceptions, interpretations, and the senses. It's who they arise to, which is the key. That's where we're bonded, yeah? Who am I? Is the Ramana question. What is this my? Yes? Because a body is just a body, but if you put my in front of it, it becomes very personal. And, yeah. Thoughts are just thoughts, but if you put my in front of them, then a depressive thought can ruin your life. Whereas if the my is not there, or if the my is part of the mental movement, then you would see that you're not bound to it because you're before it in a way. The my comes and goes. You come and go. You know, at best, the idea of J is something that comes and goes. It's not a permanent thing at all. It's not even permanent for a whole day. Yeah? But if we put all of our identification on that impermanent thing, and then we wonder why life is very scary and anxiety inducing, it's not a far stretch to see why, no? You're trying to find a solid, steady base in something that's super inconsistent. And also entangled completely with the world, which is also super inconsistent. Yeah? Because the head is really giving the world meaning. The world doesn't have any meaning. The head gives it all the meaning that it has. And then you're there to get bit in a way by the world. If there's any questions or something, just please write them in the box there. But one of those main misunderstandings is what just got pointed out with that question, is that the contents of experience is just the contents of experience. That's just what's rising and falling, yeah? That's all that really is. It's the my. Who is it arising to? You see? That's very important to see. So really, when we do these talks, we're talking about duality. We can't talk about the absolute because it would be before concepts. As soon as a word comes in, you're in duality. Yeah? So you can only see so far from these eyes. These eyes really aren't seeing that much. They're only seeing objects. It's very claustrophobic, this experience of individuality. It's very claustrophobic, yeah. When it's negated, you see you're before it, it's not claustrophobic, it's wide open. Very wide. Head's nature is suffering its own meanings. Yeah, in a way. In a way. I guess meanings that are collectively approved have stronger hold, and we suffer those more. Meanings that are collectively approved. You know meanings that are like societal meanings and things. That's very interesting, because the head is placing you. This is something that they talk about in recovery in 12 step. The head is placing you as a very unique individual, yeah? If you look at your own experience, if anybody looks at their own experience, the head has you very, very unique. You're very different, your thoughts are very different, your ideas are very different. Yet when you go to a recovery meeting, like in my experience, and you listen to people talk, they seem to have all the same thoughts, ideas, and many have done the same actions, yeah? So that uniqueness is kind of blown apart in many ways. But this is kind of like with societal meanings. The head has us sitting in this very unique false subjectivity, yet everybody seems to have many of the same beliefs. So really, this self-centered system, which is speaking of its great uniqueness, is not so unique, no? It's like when I do embodiment therapy with folks, and they get back to their core beliefs. Most of the core beliefs are, I'm bad, I'm worthless, or everything is my fault. There's like 3 or 4 of them that come up many, many times. Yeah? From many people. It's this experience is subjective and unique in many ways, but it's also not at all. Yeah, it's not this separateness. Yeah. And if you look at those core beliefs, then a bunch of stuff stems off those. Like how my head would interpret the world would be from a place of like unworthiness, yeah? So that the interpretation that the head is presenting me is presenting it from a ground level of unworthiness. So the perceptions, the ideas, and the interpretations of current events are seen pretty much through that lens, yeah? And then so unworthiness manifests in all these different ways. Thoughts, interpretations, feelings, emotions, whatever words you want to say, yeah? But it comes back to these core beliefs. Now, you're not doing the core belief. That was put in there in a way. This would be the conditioning of the head as you move through life, yeah? That core belief was brought along or placed, presented to the head, and the head picked it up. Now, a lot of my recovery was spent trying to change that core belief. And no matter what I seemed to do, it would come back. It would come back. Because it wasn't seen that I wasn't doing it. I thought I was doing that core belief, so I thought I was going to undo that core belief. But that's not the case, yeah? The freedom is from small s self. It's not for small s self. it's from. And then when you lose faith in it, really it loses all the gusto that it has. Because thoughts and ideas, core beliefs and things are only getting juice from what's before them, which would be, let's call it awareness for lack of a better term. Yeah? We're giving the meaning. This is the thing. The head, the mental system is interpreting and perceiving the world. It's giving meaning to the world. What's giving meaning to the mental system is the I or the my. It's giving all of the meaning to the mental system. That's why it's like the pivot point of suffering in many ways. Because if you're identified as the mental system through that I or my, that's the most meaning you can give something. You've dedicated your life to it. That mental system, yes? So now you're bound to it. There you go. That's the bondage we're talking about. Yeah. How does being self-realized translate into daily actions? Yeah, daily actions and stuff. Well, there's a lot happening right now where you're seated. Yes? There's all thoughts and sensations and ideas, opinions, relationships. There's all kinds of stuff happening constantly. But that would not change the fact that there is no doer of this. Yeah? And the idea is not that, there's no doer, so there's no doer right now. No, there's never been a doer. You understand? So it's, how would I? There's no doer of what's being done. It's like the Buddha said, actions happen, or essentially, to paraphrase a lot of stuff is happening, but there's no doer thereof. So you could say that there's spontaneous movements of the creation. Or, in Advaita they would say essentially it's all the energy of God, yeah? This is all the comings and goings of individuality from the space in which it takes place. Daily actions and stuff move on, which is why we were saying to take that negative, like the hardcore brutal approach to negation doesn't work, because the stuff's going to keep happening because you're not doing it. Yeah, there's no doer, so things are going to keep arising. If you're suppressing them or pushing them away, then you're more bound to it. That's going to stick you to it more, yeah? There's nothing wrong with individuality. There's no problem here as far as individuality is concerned. It gets very uncomfortable if it's the only thing you're identified with, because it's extremely self-centered. So your head is only thinking about you, and that's a you that doesn't exist as an individual thing. It's just an idea, so that gets super uncomfortable for sure. But there's no inherent problem. Individuality needs to arise. The sense needs to arise in order for us to move through the day-to-day world. Yeah? And individuality can change a lot. It can be especially when you see you're not it and you lose faith in it. It changes a lot. Quiets down. The thoughts make a lot more sense. There's a lot less of them. There's a lot of stuff that can happen when you see you're not it. Yeah, but the base, and the mental system obviously can morph as far as knowledge goes, and then this goes. But this is not going to bring you peace because it's still in dualism. Yeah. I lived at an ashram at one point in the US, and there was a professor who was a member of this ashram. And he was a very famous professor from a very famous university. And he had a whole school of people under him and millions of dollars of research. And the ashram was an Advaitic ashram. And I would get into conversations with him sometimes for hours. He was a very interesting guy, yeah? And he would say to me that the knowledge that he had from his studies and also from just being involved in Advaita and constantly reading about it, had him bound. And he believed that he wasn't going to get out of that bondage, because he really truly believed that that knowledge, which the mental system had, was binding him. And he needed to have the knowledge, right? Because of his job and the whatever, how many millions of dollars are behind him in that job. But he would say to me that that knowledge bound him. Isn't that super interesting? Because in the West and in modern society, knowledge is God. Yeah? The head can do very smart things, but it can't become peaceful. It can't see past the ceiling, its limitation of duality and self-centeredness. It can't do it. Yeah? It's not for your lack of effort, by the way. It can't do it. It cannot do it. It's not its nature. It's a dualistic system. So you can know a lot about objects, like this professor knew a lot about objects, but that was sticking him really hard to the false subjectivity, to the point where he believed he doesn't think he could get out of it. Yeah? That's very interesting. Because knowledge, this idea of knowledge being God, in many ways is a real sticky point of bondage. Yeah? Because it has you there as the knower. Just the same way that he would be the knower of thoughts, or identified as the knower of thoughts. Yeah? It has him there as the knower. And that's an uncomfortable seat, because then there's tons of stuff to know. But you're stuck in that dualistic self-centeredness. And that sense is, if it's getting reinforced constantly with someone like that, with money and knowledge and whatever else, all these accolades, yeah, that's rough. That's rough. Jivan Mukta. Alcohol, mostly alcohol. Yes, there's no end. No. Yeah. So if there's any other questions, please feel free to ask. So really what we point out here in these talks is duality, yeah? It's so that it can be negated. It's not to reinforce the thinking. Yeah? You and I, as we've said many times, are not going to get this. Being identified as the mental system is not going to get this. As soon as something in your head says, I got it, that is not you, yeah? That is the mental system claiming this message and putting you there as the knower. So that would get negated. That would get negated. That's very important to see. It's like that question from Michael was perfect. There's the I, and then there's the thought, and you're neither of those. So self-inquiry, Ramana would say, don't leave that I. Yeah, keep stuck on that I, and see where that I arises from. What's before that I? Because if you don't see that you're not that I, you're seeing from it. Yes? And it's like, if you don't see that you're not these eyes, you can only see what these eyes see. You see? You can only see what these eyes see. You don't see what's before the eyes. This is the thing. So you have to, if you see that you're not that I, you see you're before it. And then that I, and what comes after it, no longer has the influence that it once had on you. And this is where the relief hits, yes? This is the most important aspect of this in a way. There's many important aspects, but, well, whatever the head's going to say. Put meaning on it. So please ask a question, yeah, if you have any. Because questions help highlight a lot of stuff. It's very great, you know. And the misunderstandings that we often have are not unique. It's pretty, like a very kind of baseline misunderstandings. How does I know I got it? Who wants to know that you got it? That would not be you, yeah? That would not be you. Do you have a therapeutic journey before liberation? The individual, Jivan Mukta, the individual often needs, or the individuality, often needs to be turned down. The volume needs to be turned down. Yeah? So the 12 steps can do that for alcoholics in many ways. It can settle down this system. Meditation can help, or, yoga, things like this. So when you ask about a therapeutic journey, the thing is, you are liberated, yeah? So in an absolute sense, there is no before and after liberation. I understand the question where it's coming from, but let's get that clear, yeah? Whatever thinks it needs to be realized is the false. Everything is realized now. You understand? It's not like you're going to become more liberated or less liberated. It's like Ramana would say, to speak of realization is ridiculous, because you are realized, yes? So this is a negation. Meaning if you are realized, then whatever is unreal would get negated. It's not like you're going to become realized. So we got to be clear on that, yeah? Now the individual, in order to work towards negation, let's say, needs to be turned down a lot of times. So when you talk about a therapeutic journey, you're talking about a therapeutic journey for the body, essentially. Yeah, so that the body and the head can get turned down. So then you can move into self-inquiry or something, yeah? So yes, of course, this individual has been through the 12 steps, is still a member of recovery for now, now. And there's things that had to be turned down. The system had to be leveled out in many ways. I was super jacked up when I went into recovery. I was wild. The head was like, it was not, I didn't see, the world was like, I don't know, it was messy. Yeah. So there was the 12 steps helped a lot in that. And then, reading Buddhism and stuff. But this is the thing. It's not important for me to talk about that, because the sense of individual has its stuff that works for it, and that's going to be different for a lot of people. But the system, what I would say is the body and the mind need to be turned down. They need to be turned down. So when you say therapeutic journey, that's what I would point to. Does that make sense, Jivan Mukta? If you're still out there. Yeah. However that looks. But is that always necessary? No, because you are realized. Yeah, as the absolute, you're liberated now. So that's very important. That would be the main fact. It doesn't matter how crazy my head is or how broken down the body is. The realized is realized. Yeah. So I recorded a little audio course, which isn't on here, but it's on my Bandcamp, of a Zen method called the melting butter method, which is super effective. So you can go on my Bandcamp if you'd like, or just send me a message and I can send that little course recording to you. That's one that helps settle down integrate and unify this body a lot, so that self-inquiry and negation and that stuff can move forward. Yeah. Where does this leave awareness of self? Awareness of self. Well, you would be what's aware of everything that's happening. Yes, Michael? That would be, let's say, your true nature. But what hears that is the mental system. Yeah? So then your head goes, I am awareness. And this body is not awareness. The mental system is not awareness. It's placing itself as awareness, but it is not awareness. Yeah? So if you hear oftentimes you'll hear people be like, I am consciousness, yes? I am consciousness. But what is saying that is not consciousness. Consciousness is conscious of what's saying that. Yeah? This is the thing about words and satsang like this, is they can only go so far. You can only, because it's conceptual, so it's dualistic, yes? Awareness of self is that you, as awareness, which being your true nature, is aware of everything that's arising all the time, yeah? If you want to add to that question, please write anything you need, yeah? But what is claiming to be aware of self is not you. That would be that I again. Yes? That would be that I popping up. And that's very important to see, because that places you in the ultimate subjectivity as a body. It's saying this body is the subjectivity of all these objects, including the thoughts. And so there would have to be you'd have to negate that and step back again. Make sense? Yes. Okay, good. Good. Because one of the things about this, like when we talk about this, is you can see your head constantly trying to grab this and place itself in the seat of the absolute. Yeah? That is the subjectivity of individuality, but it's not the absolute subjectivity. It's an object of awareness. Yeah? You are an object of awareness. And many writers would say that awareness is you could call it impersonal awareness, meaning that it's not individual to you, that awareness. Yeah? When the people sit back into that, they're attuning to the same field of awareness that you are. So it's considered impersonal in that way. But you can see now, Michael, that's great. This is really nice. You can see now that any move your head would make to try to become that wouldn't work, yeah? That's really the important thing to see. That the only move, in a way, the only method that can work would be inquiry or negation of that sense of individuality. Because any way that the head makes a move to try to get to what you already are would only reify that sense of individuality. Yeah, it's just going to divide experience again. This is like the finger trap of spiritual practice. When people sit down to meditate, They're there as the meditator. And this is what they really get. This is really the bondage, yes? So the head gets quiet, and then they go, okay, the head's quiet, yeah? But then when they stand up and the head gets loud again, they think they lost it because they're identified as the head. But the head is never going to become quiet. It's always going to be anxious. That's its nature. So it's who does the head arise to? Yeah. This is, Ramana would say self-inquiry is the only option. Because any other movement is only going to reify what you're not. It's just going to keep sitting you in the seat of individual, yeah? And there is a sense of individuality, and it probably will continue to rise. But it doesn't change the fact that you're not it.